That was fucking terrible.
I don't like that one.
I'm never doing that one again. I just picked one and I was like, what the fuck is this shit?
That was intro
Oh,
lit,
no.
ladies and
People
gentlemen.
ragging on my favorite one, then you gonna pick that one.
I'm just saying, that was just bad.
I have taste. I
just picked one. I didn't even I knew we were late, so I was like, I just hit it, you know.
That's all right. It's fine. So fun news. Or thanks everybody for joining LessThan3NPC. I guess I'll do the intro before I do news. That show where three of us friends talk about stuff that's too serious to talk about while playing video games. I'm Des. That's Joe. That's Kara. Good. Intro done.
There is a prerequisite for tonight for my information. I am definitely Grumpy Cat tonight, so I apologize in advance.
That's fine. We're gonna have lots of good conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hopefully you'll be re-energized, or at the very least, you can bring the pessimist angle and channel that energy into the conversation. So
I might just have to do that.
I see a void doggo.
Yeah, he's leaving.
But he's leaving.
Bye, Moose.
He's
he sensed my energy.
He was like,
all
right,
fuck this shit.
He's like, whoa, Kara's kind of prickly right now.
Get out of here.
So before we get started with our topic, we will, as of our next show, we will have our own custom intro and we will have our own custom background because we've gone pro. We're using the pro version of Restream now, which is why we have our fancy logo up there in the corner instead of the Restream one. We're gonna allow Kara space to rage.
Yeah.
We're just gonna create space for her to be mad.
Tossing notebooks, crumpling papers, whatever helps, Kara. Whatever
helps.
Yeah, whatever helps you channel that energy.
Actually,
I shouldn't have crumpled that up. I need that. I got notes for things I gotta do tomorrow.
Nice. Solid work.
Yep. Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, sorry, raging feels good. It just does. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about tonight.
We're not talking about rage. Our topic is not rage tonight.
No, that's it. We could put that on the
put it on the list.
Yeah, put that on the list. Put anger.
Rage and anger and expressions and healthy expressions of that stuff.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
I like that. I like that as a
or what does that mean to us? Why do we get angry about certain things? Why do certain things activate us more than others? Yeah. It's a thought.
White hot rage.
It's all about the ideas tonight.
But yeah.
Ideas and ideals.
Yes. Speaking of ideals, that's our topic tonight. We're going to talk about ideals and values. It's we categorize ourselves in different ways, and one of those ways, and I mean, when we say ideals and values, we're kind of talking about ideals and values in the ethical sense. There's value as an economic sense is very different. So when we say ideals and values, we're talking about in the ethical sense. Let me pull up my notes.
Oh yeah, I had that too. Did I close that in my rage quit earlier? Probably.
Probably.
Chat, you need to understand nothing was going for me, okay, in the last 35 minutes. So.
Just barriers, one after another.
Yeah,
one
fuck
after
this
another.
Shit. Fuck it.
Fuck it.
Okay. So, I think the first thing we have to talk about is the difference between, obviously, what an ideal is and what a value is. Does anyone want to take that away?
Those very, very small topics.
Yes. So when we talk about ideals, I guess as we've sort of discussed it and defined it, an ideal is a societal best case scenario when it comes to types of ideals, like the
Mhm.
ideal marriage or the ideal patriot or the ideal home, the ideal job. Like what sort of, as a society, we've decided the best case scenario, the perfect thing, the
Mhm.
Mhm.
perfect version of that thing is. And a thing that is almost always never attainable because life is more
Right.
complicated than the ideal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And values are sort of like our personal ideals when they're met with reality. Because how our values are formed as we live will always be formed by our experiences.
Mhm.
Values are never ever really a best case scenario. They're sort of just your personal best case scenario
Yeah.
Mhm.
when it comes to what you believe and
Yeah, it's like an internalized categorical definition of what you deem as important,
yeah,
Mhm.
right?
for sure.
And everyone's value system can be drastically different than another person's.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, there's components of that that lead down some very, very unhealthy roads, while on the other side, it can actually help you recover from things. So,
Mhm. Well, and I was just going to say too, I think your values can drastically change over time. And like Des was saying, in terms of like life experience, in terms of like things you go through, learnings that you have, learnings that you tune into, um, can all really impact those values, and it can shift and change. Because I mean, I'm just saying this right now because I'm shifting what I value and what I should like, what I want for myself, what I see for my life, what I see for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, um, and it's different than it has been, and it's certainly different than uh, what I've been sort of taught or conditioned to
Yes.
value, right? Um, so there's going to be an ebb and flow. They're never fixed, I would say. I feel I'm not saying that they're ever going to be fixed, but I will say, I'm just going to throw this out there, like maybe a conversation point. Um, I think there is a perception, a societal perception that ideals and values should be fixed,
Hmm.
um, and that there are certain ones that are immutable and forever unchanging. And I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I feel like that's. eh, I feel like, especially when you're young, your
Hmm.
what you value and what you consider your values are going to change a lot. Like, when you're younger, you might value freedom a little bit more, like the freedom to make your own choices. You might value, like, depending on like your home situation, like you might value quiet time more as a teenager because the world's very chaotic. Like one of your values might be like sort of a sense of um space
Hmm.
or something. Like you can, as your life situation changes, you value different things, especially if you lack those things.
Yeah.
And then, like, as far as like your personal beliefs and values, like when you're younger, those are mainly going to be given, like, especially granted to you um by your parents or whoever raises you, or like
Hmm.
the communities that you grow up in. Maybe valuing like religiosity at a young age because that's sort of the community that you're grown into. And then learning later on that whether or not a person or a thing is necessarily religious
Hmm.
may not be even a part of your value structure anymore. Like
Hmm.
that's not a thing that you need, and that's not a thing that you find valuable in other people.
Hmm. I think it's interesting that I'm just thinking about the evolution and trying to like think about my own evolution of values and ideals. And I think, like for me, I very much see it as like, and it's connected to what you're saying, Des, about like as when you're young, um, I think values and ideals can be inwardly focused and like individualistic. And then for me, as I grew older, they got very broad, right? And far-reaching. And then as I get older, they're getting more focused and turning inward again, right? But much more developed in a reflective way, right? So I might have valued my alone time when I was younger, but now as an adult, I know what alone time does for me. I actually have an understanding of it, right? Not just that I like it, not just that I gravitate toward it because it's safe, but it's necessary, right? And through experience and through living, like, I mean, I'm coming out of a course that I did over the weekend where I was, and I'm going to use the word stuck, with a group of people that are, I had a hard time identifying with, and they weren't terrible people or anything like that. They were quite a bit younger than me, so there was definitely like a big generational difference. But just being in that group just reminded me how much, like, dear God, do I enjoy silence? Like, just like peace and calmness, and like just through this last course that I have not just like sat silently doing nothing more often. Just like really taking in no stimulus and enjoying that. And I think that's what comes with evolution and age and experience. But I don't know, Kara, Des, what are your thoughts? Like, have you had similar evolutions, or what have your evolutions looked like around ideals, values?
Well, the church tried to tell me what my ideals and values should be. Specifically the Catholic Church. I rejected those by the age of 10. Just a lot of things about it just didn't sit with me very well.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was a lot of hypocrisy in it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though at 10 I didn't know what hypocrisy was. I was just like, this doesn't feel right. Why do they get to yell at me, but they're doing the bad things? Anyway, so that was, I think, a very early lesson for me in terms of understanding what I hold as a value. But I mean, I always had a frustration with ideals, I think, more so than the values that I had, because I've always been very self-aware of my own values, and a lot of my self values have nothing to do with other people. And I think that's how I've been able to live my life with a lot of the slight bit of confidence I have in my life, in that, like, the decisions I make and the people I associate with and stuff like that has always felt very secure. Like, it doesn't take up brain space for me. And I always think that that's always a very good way of recognizing what a good value is in yourself, is that it feels easy. It's not something that not to say that you don't have a moment when you kind of rummage through stuff. Of course you do, but it feels easy when it's kind of set in something that feels very comfortable. And of course, what you were saying earlier, that can change. But yeah, the ideals were something that I had more struggling with, because I knew that my ideals, or my interpretation of ideals, were not the same that the majority of society set up as ideals. There was an experience when you are a kid, and I think a lot of kids have this, and there's different perspectives on it, especially in where you're aligned with. But it's just like, the ideal is to be the popular kid, or the popular group of people. Why? Because being popular means that you're more sociable, you're more approachable, you hold attention, you deliver more things to more people because of it. That's an ideal, to be a human in a community, to deliver these things. This is good, right? That's how the interpretation is when you're younger, anyway, because no one's there to tell you this shit. But so I think when I was younger, there was this really strong disconnect of understanding, like, why do these ideals exist, and why can I not comprehend them in connecting with what I think is important,
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
right? So even though I had my own set of values, a lot of those values couldn't transform into the societal norm of ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I couldn't connect a lot of them. Um and I'm trying to like think of a few things, especially for me. Like there was, it's stuff like, we can talk about like physical things. So the ideal of young women is to have long hair, wear frilly dresses, wear bright colors, and be very joyful. Obviously very reductive. Like I
Yeah.
know it's more intricate than this, but on an overarching scale. Um, and to me, I was like a very sports oriented kid. I wanted to run. I'm adventurous. That is a value that I hold in my life. To seek adventure, to hold that energy of adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not to say that you couldn't do all these things looking like, in these little dresses and all these other things. Of course not. You could also do that. But for me, it was more comfortable to be like, I want to be in that t-shirt and shorts and running shoes and let's go. Because I don't want to be slowed down by anything.
Mm-hmm.
So when people would look at me and say, "Oh, you're over rambunctious. You're too much energy when it comes to that." Um, you know, uh, it's this thing where you suddenly become on more like where we're talking about ideals are not attainable. You become not the ideal. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, you're off the line. We're going to push you off to this side. And because of that, which is the most damaging point of ideals, I think, is that people then validate an experience to behave differently around you,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you are not attempting to be the ideal of something, I can now therefore treat you differently than I would if you were the ideal of something,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
right? Either that's I will be around in your space different, I will say things to you that I wouldn't say to someone who I think is an ideal
Right.
like perspective. Um it's everything. It's like it comes down to the reality that when people have a cemented ideal, they will change their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And the ramifications of that is that most people get treated pretty poorly because of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a very frustrating thing I remember growing up and witnessing and kind of like, especially in my early teens, like trying to decipher and understand, and then looking back on it as an adult and kind of seeing these circumstances, you're like, oh shit, you were just a shitty person because I didn't match up to what you thought I should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's something that I've always had a lot of conflict with
Yeah.
with a lot of people.
Yeah, and I will say I think like ideal in itself is a neutral term because everybody's ideals are different.
Mhm.
There is there are some ideals that are agreed upon by a greater number of people than others, but like for me, I think ideal is like a neutral term because
Mm-hmm.
it's just something you consider to be the best case scenario, the perfect thing. Um, like example being like uh having grown up with someone with BPD, her ideal for like what an ideal my mom, her ideal for what an ideal relationship looked like was a relationship in which she had total control.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like that was imparted onto me as an ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Like you should like not in so many words of like she said like you should always be able to control your partner, but in the way that she lived her life, like that was what was imparted as important and as the ideal scenario for a relationship for me
Mm-hmm.
growing up. So I grew up with these really like weird sort of twisted ideals and values. And it wasn't until growing up and later experiencing, like having more experiences, that my values changed, and realizing that that was an extremely toxic way to live your life and to look at relationships. So it wasn't by any stretch of the imagination a societal ideal, but it was an ideal that was imparted onto me by the people I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
Which is the experience of most children, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's where you get this like experience when you start seeing people as they grow up, they do a shift if they don't align with the ideals that they were delivered upon, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There are ideals that I don't know if they're ideals. Maybe they're more values that my parents have imparted kind of on me in different ways. And yes, some of them have changed, and some of them I've dropped, and some I've obtained as I've grown older. From their perspective in their teachings. You got a really good parent if they're actually going to sit down and be like, let me teach you about values. Okay.
Yeah.
That does not happen. I did not experience that at all. For example, a very strong value that I learned from my father is about integrity, right? To have responsibility for what you say, what you do, and how you affect the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
That is supposed to be a very strong value that guides a lot of my decision making in my life. And I've never let go of that. And I think that's something that I'll always have for a very, very long time, whether or not I hold that higher on the list or lower on the list. But one value that I definitely don't attach my father, like, to what my father has kind of held is like the perspective of holding on, like stubbornness is what I'm really trying to get at here. Like the value of saying like, no, if I sit and I know this as an absolute, then that is true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That value of holding on to something, like, it's not about what it is, it's the holding on to it, right?
Yeah.
It's really important that you don't shift your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's important that you hold your ground on something. And so for me, I probably was like that quite a bit through my teens. And as I got a little bit older, I started realizing like the world does not exist in absolutes in any form across the board. Like
Mm-hmm.
nothing in our world is absolute. I don't know, some mathematician out there is gonna be like, well, actually, and I'll be like, fuck you. That's not what we're talking about. But the other thing is that when you are siloed with something, that turns your perspective,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's a value that I don't align with my father a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
right? So these are things that I'm choosing and picking out of the pieces now. And yeah, you just start learning what feels good and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like it sort of works as like when we're young, we're imparted with these ideals. And then just the more and more we experience life, it's like we start to create our own values and we pick and choose from these ideals of like, okay, these are the values that I have picked from these ideals. But the more you experience life, um, your experiences kind of judge how close you are to reaching that ideal, and your values either get further away from that ideal or you struggle to keep your values as close to that ideal as possible even though it's unattainable.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's like sort of being able to be realistic about yourself is like, is the ideal of this scenario actually possible, or is it a thing that, you know, I need to recognize as more individualistic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I just want to go back to something Kara brought up around ideals and not attaining them. And I think I'm going to tap into my philosopher side here. As someone who's like really enamored and drawn to existentialism, particularly absurdism, early on, the concept of an ideal always seemed weird to me, right? My first thought even as encountering them as a child, was why do these even exist? Because it all seemed very arbitrary to me. And as I moved through life, I I think ideals can work for people, and I think you can aspire to an ideal, and I think that's fine. Um, but for me, I only ever really encountered them being imposed on people, and then sanctioning or punishing people when they didn't measure up. And it wasn't organized per se. Like there wasn't an ideals master going around and like, I smite thee and I smite you and all that kind of stuff. But like there was social consequences to not measuring up to ideals. Again, I'm going back to my formative years, I guess, and in particular around masculine gender identity. And I'm just speaking for myself here. I did not measure up to the ideals. I looked the part, right? I did not act the part, and there was so much about looking masculine and not performing to the ideal or not measuring up to the ideal that my peers didn't know what to deal with. And for the most part, the way they dealt with that discomfort is a little bit of bullying, but mostly ostracization. Like I was an outcast. Nobody really wanted to be my friend. Nobody really understood me. Nobody really got what was going on. And the level of social interactions I had were very limited, right? And I bring this up because again, I recently had an experience when I was thrust back into a group of people that were relatively the same age, and who, for whatever reason, knew what their ideals, or like wanted to pursue their ideals and wanted to commit to their gender scripts and gender identities and stuff like that. And again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that on an individual level, but I think I could once again feel the not fitting in and the energy that came my way because I wasn't performing to the ideal that they had, right? And so again, I'm approaching this now as an adult with an adult brain, and so it didn't hit home like it did back when I was that age. But I think it is funny, interesting. I guess I'm not sure what the right word is there, but like it is interesting how willing peers are and society is to dogpile onto people who are not measuring up to the ideal, right? And then we can see that in heteronormativity. We can see that in patriarchal context. We can see that in a white supremacist context, right? Society establishes the ideal and then actively seeks out to eliminate things that are not pursuing or attaining that ideal. And again, you can't really attain an ideal. It's not really the point. But society acts like you can. And when you can't, you're sanctioned or punished.
For sure. So, you know, as we grow up and we find that other people have different values in even to down to in different contexts. I found, so I was doing a little bit of pre-research online for this episode, and I found in like a like corporate workbook for like a big company, what they consider values that are important for employees to have, and what a company considers values for people, which I thought was insane, and I kind of wanted to go over it.
Okay, first off, who here has worked for a like downtown office multi-international conglomerate company?
Oh, yes. 100%.
Okay, so we're gonna I'm gonna experience this because it's gonna be a lot of what I've heard before.
Okay.
Also, I just want to highlight this too because Helba Barn, yeah, like that's basically it. At least that's what it comes down to. Is like, I thought you were blank, and you were supposed to be blank.
Yeah.
And then you were not.
And that makes me uncomfortable, and so I'm going to react negatively to this whole thing. Yeah.
For fucking sure. Kara, will you put up my screen share?
Yeah.
You just gotta toggle it. Boom. Core values.
Oh yeah.
We were chatting about this slightly before stream, and there were several things in this list that were making me grumpy.
So there's
but like the full gamut of human interaction is on this sheet. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we can't have all of them.
Oh no. It like, it wants you to pick from a list of like what your core values are, like,
Right.
that sort of thing. It's a way to identify potential employees.
Okay. Everyone pick 2 that you see that you're just like, oh yeah, 100%.
Oh, of like, what are your values?
Yeah. I'm not limiting to 2. I'm just saying at least 2.
I just love Xandra's little thing. Reaction that is, well, you can fuck off then. The value I was taught in childhood.
Yeah, I love that reaction to that is always, well, you can fuck off then.
Yep. Well, that's how I approach a lot of these conversations. Was like,
for sure.
Well, that's stupid, or I don't mean to use ableist language. That's fucking ridiculous. Get the fuck out of here with that bullshit. You know, get to know me as an individual. I mean, I am not my gender expression, but that's a different conversation.
Responsibility, I feel like, definitely is one of my values. Like, I value people who are responsible and being responsible. I think that's incredibly important for people to be able to own up to their actions and to own up to be at their word and to own up to their own actions. I think that's super important. And kindness, which I can't think is pretty self-explanatory. It's like, I think it's important.
I was like, the definition of kindness is like, if you need to explain kindness, I don't know.
I think it's important that people are kind and that, like, at least people look at the kind option or recognize what the kind option is. Even if you choose the not kind option, I think that's also fine. I don't think everybody deserves the kind option, but I think you should be able to recognize when people do and do not deserve the kind option.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Be sure to embody both surprise and discipline.
All right, you two, pick 2.
Well, you know one of mine already. That's integrity. And then I think I would have a cross between man, there's so many words on here.
Winning is on here.
Creativity /
wonderful.
Cleverness. I like cleverness. I especially like clever creativity. This is very good. These are good things. But again, like it's the sorry, you pick, Joe, and then I have something to say.
On brand with my earlier little soapbox, I'm having a really hard time picking these. As far like I'm going to pick 2 based on a value that I have only for myself and not as an expectation for others. Solitude. I value solitude. What else? And I value empathy. But again, that is only for myself and not something that I have as an expectation for anybody.
Yeah. Well, I think I said this at the beginning. It's just like I really think that values need to be internalized.
Inwardly focused.
Right. The moment you start applying your values upon other people, you are essentially placing expectation on people without their consent.
Honestly,
that's how I see it.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's fine for me to expect people to be responsible. Because that gives me a value judgment on them on whether or not I'm going to work with them or interact with them.
Mhm.
You know,
Right, but I'm saying is you can't expect them to have the same level of value to that than you do, though.
no, but I think that's fine for me.
Mhm.
I think it's
Because it's like
internal.
on here.
I'm not gonna force them to be responsible, and I'm not gonna, you know.
I think
But I think me putting a value judgment on somebody else's responsibility is fine for my own mental health.
But I think this is sort of a larger point, though. I was actually just thinking about here, like in terms of like solitude and empathy here, in terms of like an expectation. I think anytime that you sort of center in on some of these things, it is going to limit the amount of connections you can make, right? And that's not a bad thing. It's I think not reasonable to think that you're going to be forming connections and be cordial with every single person that you meet. This is why we don't get along with people, right? Is that on some fundamental level, there's core values that I have where it's like, I'm never going to connect with this person under any circumstance, under any context. I'm not going to connect with this particular person over here. And
We
that's
are
okay.
not gonna be friends.
Yeah, we're not going to
Yeah.
be friends. We're not going to work together. We're not going to gel. We're not ever going to have sort of some kind of connection. And I think that's okay. I think
Yeah.
it's unrealistic to look at every value on here. It's like, well, we have to work with every value on here. No,
No.
we're not built that way, you know?
No. I mean, I do see what you're saying in that, like, you can't impart those values on you can't impart your own values on other
Right.
people,
Mhm.
but I think it's a reasonable thing to judge people by their values.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. And that happens all the time. Like I'm looking at this list right now and one of them is just like ambition, you know. Ambition can be interpreted as a positive or negative thing. Ambition to me is quite neutral, but someone's ambition could be toxic to the people around them,
For
right?
sure.
Hmm.
They could be using people, they could be, you know, stealing things from them to maintain their ambition. However, I can't instill that person to say you should lower your value of ambition in your life,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Or like,
That's not for me to do.
or for me, like, I can't look at another person and be mad at them that they don't value solitude more, right? Like, or empathy more,
Mhm.
right?
But
It,
you can explain to someone, "Hey, this solitude is very important for me, and
yeah.
the behavior that you're doing right now isn't feeling super good because of it." Right? So
Or on the flip side where it's like, because I enjoy my own company, um, don't worry about that, right?
Mhm.
Because again, it's like it looks weird when somebody is just keeping their own company, right?
I
People have
mean,
to
you're
come up with a
talking to
story.
a bunch of introverts on the internet,
I
Joe.
know, but I'm talking about like
We're doing okay.
I'm talking about like in the before time, right? Going
Right.
to a bar during film fest and sitting alone at a bar with
Mhm.
my dinner, reading a book while I wait for the next movie to start, right?
Do you see
Um,
that fucking thing? This is what reminded me. This is exactly to your point. That fucking thing on Twitter where it was like shitting on people who like to go to bars to read books.
what?
Who's
Yeah, it
doing
was like
that?
it was this whole drama on
Oh,
Twitter. It was
people.
like whether or not
Uh,
it was okay to go to a bar and read a book.
Of course
Like,
it is.
yeah, exactly. But people are like, you know, you're intentionally isolating yourself in an environment where you're supposed to meet people and where you're supposed to socialize, you know. Well, it's like, no, that's an expectation. That's just a
Mhm.
societal expectation. Like that's
and
That's
may I
actually
just
an ideal.
yeah.
The
may I just
ideal is that people
distinguish, and maybe this is an ideal of mine, but when I think of bar or pub, and maybe this is like my inner Irish coming out, I don't necessarily think of a place where you go to quote unquote meet people.
Mhm.
Um, I think club, maybe. I don't know. That's not my jam. But like when I think about like meet people, hashtag cook up, whatever, that's club, right? I think bar pub, you go there for a pint or two or three or whatever, and a nice, comforting meal and a warm atmosphere.
Mhm.
And I am perfectly content to just kind of be in that atmosphere and enjoy my own company, right?
So that would be an example of when a value butts up with a societal ideal. Like a
Yeah.
value you have butts up against a societal ideal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hold on,
So
we
again,
gotta.
I don't go and read my book in a pub or a bar at past 5, because that you get into the like club environment,
Yeah.
Mhm.
even in a bar or pub.
We have to recognize that Xandra is Borg. So
Unity,
Nerd.
organization, purpose.
perfect. Let's go.
I say that with love, Xandra, because I know
Nerd.
I feel where you're coming from on that.
Yeah. Fembot
Yeah.
is also saying one of their favorite things is to go to a bar and just hang out. So
Yeah.
It's an underrated, and again, I say this again, full disclosure, I've identified it as a person who values solitude, but it's such an underrated pleasure to go and have a dinner with yourself. Take yourself on a date. Like it's a really fun thing to do for yourself.
mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, I take myself on movie dates all the time.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is go to the movie theaters alone.
Yeah.
But
when I lived downtown, like I used to take myself on dates all the time because there was bars and there was stuff like right next to me within walking distance, and it's like I could go take a book or I could go take my work, and I would go and I would sit and I would just be surrounded by people. I would still get the social experience of like, there are people around me talking. I'm not by
Mhm.
myself. And like the noise was always good, but then I could just work or read or do whatever and sort of have a focus and be
Yeah.
doing something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, okay, so let's just dive in on that a little bit. What are some things that we do to self-actualize our own values in spite even, or just to push away the societal ideal that is kind of presented in front of us? What are some examples of that?
Examples.
Yeah, communication's a huge one.
Yeah.
Because in a societal sense, communication is like one of the least important things that people ascribe to being a value in a relationship. It's like for the ideal relationship, whether that's friendship or romantic or whatever, like communication doesn't typically hit that list on lots of people. Like
Mhm.
you want like chemistry and compatibility and like sexual compatibility and like
What's the common one? I just want them to be funny.
yeah, sense of
Sense of
humor,
humor. Yeah.
like
I don't know
whatever.
why I
Yeah,
said it like that. I'm so sorry.
like cool. It's fine if they're funny, but are they gonna punch a hole through a door? It's like there's more important things, I
Mhm.
think.
Well, and not to nitpick too much on the funny thing, but like I and people can call me out on this. Feel free to call me out on this, but I don't think like a sense of humor is like a personality trait, because we all have a sense of humor, right? But it's different, right, for different people, right?
Yeah.
And the compatibility is not whether or not you have a sense of humor; it's whether your sense of humor is aligned, right? Are you both into um, painful, punny dad jokes, right? Do you both like dark humor, right? That's more specific. Calling it like I want to date someone with a sense of humor. It's like, well, we all have a sense of humor, right? But is it dry? Do you like dry humor? Do you like poop jokes? Is that how you vibe? Is that how you vibe with your humor, right?
Yes, poop
It's
jokes.
probably nitpicky. It's
No,
probably
no, no. I want to dig
whatever.
deeper into this. I think that that's insanely correct because I think I've I think I've in the course of making fun of this thing, I think I've recognized why people find that important. Um People find different things funny
Hmm.
based on their value system. Some people like jokes that are aimed at people of a lower social status,
Hmm.
of um people with issues, people they don't identify with. They like that sort of mean comedy. And that in itself is sort of a value. It's like you
Yep.
don't ascribe a value to treating people like people. Like you ascribe a value to putting them in boxes and making fun of them.
Yeah.
Like, but you know, there's different types of humor, and your type of humor kind of is a weird display of your value system
Yeah.
on whether or not you like something that's funny.
Oh yeah, you can read a lot into someone based on what they find funny.
Oh yeah.
It's probably one of the fastest ways, because people kind of become a little bit vulnerable when they attach themselves to the humor that they like, and they probably expose an emotion more easily to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, it's always interesting that way.
And
I've gone full circle. I think sense of humor is important. I've gone full circle.
Well, and I think it's I guess I'm going full circle too, because it's like, for me, my value is humor never punches down.
Yeah.
Any humor that involves punching down is a deal breaker for me. It's like an instant thing for me. If somebody's making jokes about people's body types or gender or race or ability or whatever, it's instant, and I instantly judge and revile that person. Like, nothing makes me despise a person more quickly than if they make jokes about groups of people.
Yep. Well, my caveat to that, and this is just me personally, I think it's shitty to make fun of groups of people that you're not a part of.
Yeah, well, the punching down thing is part of that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, you can punch laterally. I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think the gallows humor is the criteria
gallows
that
humor.
right. For those that don't know, the gallows humor criteria is like, it literally relates to, like, if you're in the gallows, you can make jokes about being in the gallows, but if you're outside of the gallows making jokes about people in the gallows, then you're part of the execution, right? So it's a way to kind of like understand lateral humor within communities and stuff like that.
There's another line off that, though, is self-deprecation humor, and that's dangerous to keep up at. So it's I say be wary of that a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, too much of anything is not a good thing. But I feel like
anyway. Coming back.
To
the values.
Our topic is not humor tonight. Maybe that needs to be a topic.
This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring this back here. Okay, so we talked about values that we picked 2 or 3 that were like, okay, this is something that I align with. What are 2 or 3 values on this list that you're just like, that is at the bottom, or it's not even on my list? And folks in chat, please pick as well. We want to hear from you.
Yeah.
Can I just highlight Xandra's comment? If they get upset if you don't think it's funny, just being socialized as a masculine person for most of my life, I did not laugh at the things I was supposed to laugh at, and this is one of the first like signs that I had that I was wrong. Not really, because the kinds of things, and I'm sure people will know what I'm talking about here, the kinds of things that like adolescent boys and young men think are funny did not jive with me at all. I mean, you talk about that like disparaging humor. Yeah, no, that outed me very early on for sure. Anywho,
that's my face.
Sorry. I was going to post something in the Discord.
Yes, we will post that sheet. Yeah.
I'll do that after the show, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Abundance. Des mentioned this right away, and I immediately was activated. Abundance is one. Especially as a person,
it could be abundance of anything. It doesn't have to be wealth.
No, but
driven.
Wealth is the first thing that comes to mind.
Abundance of joy in your life.
Wealth is technically its own value on that list.
Right. But abundance is an applicable term to a lot of things.
But still, though, we live in a capitalist-centered society. So, to me, abundance default is wealth. Right?
If I want an abundance of Smarties in my house, I am allowed to have that as a high value system in my life. Okay.
Do you value having Smarties, like an abundance of Smarties in your
Yeah.
house?
Specifically Smarties.
I don't know. Or those little gummy frogs, I have an abundance of them. That makes me happy.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, abundance doesn't hit me.
Yeah.
No,
hit
I'm
anything
not
for
saying
me.
it's high on my list. I'm just saying it can be applicable from many different avenues. Okay?
Kara's just
No.
challenging me on my.
I am in challenge mode tonight. I am activated.
I'm gonna
Wealth.
say
obviously.
I don't value tradition.
Yep.
I think tradition is very, very low on my list.
I thought we were supposed to talk about Smarties.
Not until we send you some Canadian Smarties, Xandra. No one is allowed to say Smarties are bad. Okay.
I don't think I've ever had Canadian Smarties.
Oh, yeah, we were supposed to
They're
get
nothing
you
to
some
write
while
home
you were
about.
here.
I don't have any
Listen,
comparison because I've only had Smarties in Canada, but they're really
American
underwhelming.
Smarties. No.
I like American Smarties though.
Smarties are underwhelming. It's just chocolate covered in candy.
Okay.
I guess
Cadbury eggs.
Okay, sorry. Your first one was what again?
Tradition.
What's another one?
Patriotism.
Yeah.
That's a solid one too.
Fuck patriotism.
Like why? For what?
Yeah, wealth is up there, but I think I covered that already. I was gonna say control, but I'm like,
just different ways.
That's it. There's different ways to interpret that one. So,
one for me would be I noticed one on here that says poise. So to position yourself in a state that you may see yourself above others, to hold yourself in that
poise
state.
means.
Yeah, poise is like you poise yourself to be proper and to be better than others, to exemplify that there is no one like me.
I don't know that I agree with that definition. I think poise
Let's look it up.
I think poise is more of an air of control.
Like
not seeming like kerfluffled and
it is to graceful and elegant bearings in a person.
That doesn't tell us anything.
I don't know. I just look at that and I feel nothing. So I'm just saying it's low on my list. There's nothing there.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no value for that. I don't see people as like having to present themselves. Oh, there's another one. Equilibrium? Poise is equilibrium? That doesn't seem right.
Balance and equilibrium. Yeah.
I gotta look into that more. I've always seen poise as the first definition. I've never used it as a equilibrium component to something. But I have learned something tonight. There's two ways to look at it.
I guess I've heard dancers described as having good poise, like things like professional ballet dancers.
Equilibrium.
Yeah, like balance.
Balance.
Halibut.
Shut up.
Block incoming attacks without getting staggered.
Shut up, Halibut.
Yes.
Bowtie's question here, though.
That's
how does
so
poise
good.
relate
Hold
to
on,
stoicism?
I just need this to be shown on the video later. Like, oh. Okay.
No, but can we highlight Bowtie's question here? How does poise relate to stoicism?
I don't know.
Well,
I apparently didn't have the right definition of what poise is, so what the fuck do I know?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think because I was looking at some of these here, like independence, individuality, stoicism, poise. I think in terms of like when these different values can become toxic, I think is when we can lean into some of these values as a coping mechanism. Again, it can get us through situations that are hard, but if they become all we rely on, then we can cut ourselves off to other aspects, right? So I think as stoicism, that was something I was sort of known for in high school, but it was a survival mechanism. It was not something I was valuing, right?
You
But
were just trying to seem non-reactive.
yeah, I was just trying to get through
Yeah.
my school day every day and get home, because there was so many scripts being thrown at me that I didn't know how to handle it, right? And so the stoicism I leaned into and committed to helped, but it became a maladaptive coping strategy later on in life,
Right.
right? So I think we can value poise. And again, Kara, I'm sorry, I'm going with a different definition than yours. I think we can value poise. I think we can value not being staggered in a fight. But I think if it becomes something you rely on solely, I think can become harmful to yourself.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, I have
But that's
another one.
yes.
Unless someone else has another one.
No, go.
Loyalty. I find loyalty to be a very low thing value that I
Hmm.
have.
Mm.
And I know some people may or may not agree with that, but I have always lived in an existence where if you need to go in a different direction in your life, go in it. Um, there's components of loyalty that are great. It can make you feel like have an attachment and some security and value with that. But I think there's a lot of really damaging things that loyalty can do that is like overperformed in our society. Like
Yeah.
loyalty is an ideal. It's like
Ride or die.
ride or die,
Hmm.
and I think it's overpumped in terms of the significance of loyalty in life. um and I think we as humans need to understand, like, we don't need people to like bend the knee or like promise fealty to us to have good relationships. And like, I'm being over generous with that description, but it really does come down to that. Is just people need to ebb and flow and
Mhm.
make their way through life that makes sense. Now, of course, that's not like abuse people and just keep moving on.
Right.
That's very different. But the idea that to be loyal to someone, meaning to sacrifice something that's important for you for the sake of another person, I think
Hmm.
is probably over amplified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with like kindness. Because even though I value kindness, I'm sorry, not kindness, positivity. Because I
Hmm.
saw Xander mentioned positivity. Um, there is like toxic positivity where
100%.
you
100%.
can just be too positive about a thing. It's like
Live, laugh, love.
nothing's wrong ever, everything's going to be great, you just have to reframe your mind and just everything's going to be fine.
You attract the energy you put out into the world.
Oh yeah. And how many people have been sucked into that and not only just, adapted their own value system or core values to that mentality, but have also been swindled out of thousands of dollars while doing so.
Or things like toxic body positivity, where it's like body positivity is such a thing that's like it's very like hype right now, where it's like everybody should be positive about their bodies, like love the
Hmm.
shape you're in, and if you don't love the shape you're in, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Then like
Yeah.
that is a negative reflection on you. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah. Again, it's that imposition of where one person is at on another person and holding that up as this is how you should be, right? Um, you should come out this way. You should be this queer. You should be this positive about whatever. Um, yeah. Yeah.
Well, to go down this line a little bit, Des, like when we talk about physical ideals, right? I think there's a really interesting piece there. Actually, first, are we done with this chart for right now?
Oh yeah, we can.
Okay, we're gonna close this now. Um, I think it's important to talk about physical ideals because it is such a component or such a present component in our society, especially in North America, is like, what is the ideal body?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's obviously very manufactured in the media that we consume. It's pandered to a very unattainable physicality of a lot of things. There's always the beauty standards are always shifting and creating a new trend on
Mm-hmm.
beauty. um and it's purposeful, it's marketing, it's designed to do this because we don't want to ever be in a position where beauty companies and other forms of structure and organization in society can say, well, we can't love everyone because not everyone can be beautiful. And as long as that's the extent of the influence that you have over society,
Mm-hmm.
then you can purposely cause this need and this panic to constantly change,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
right?
I do see where Des is coming from though, because I can see this a similar thing in the self-care conversation, right? Where if you don't self-care, that's a you problem. And we're going to ignore the fact that you don't have money, the fact that you don't have housing, the fact that you don't have access to resources. Um, this kind of thing where it's like we can, if your mental health is shitty, well, that's all on you because you're not doing self-care correctly, right? Where it's this imposition that's your fault, and you're
Mhm.
broken because you can't self-care right?
Right. I'm trying to say it from my perspective of the world, because here's the thing. I don't align with the ideals and I purposely reject them, right?
Yeah,
They don't exist in my mind. They don't exist in my society,
yeah.
right? It's fucked. So when people are just like, I'm trying to do this or I'm trying to look like that, I'm like, the first thing that pops into my mind is I don't get to have an opinion on that
Mm-hmm.
Right.
because it's not my body.
Right.
First
Yeah.
and foremost, right? We have control over one thing on our body, and not one thing on our body. We have control over one body, and that's ourselves, right? But what my frustration and what my experience growing up was, there was never a position to being saying, "Hey, Kara, you're okay the way that you look." That was never said, ever,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
Mhm.
And so what I advocate for is that we need to reject the ideal wholeheartedly. And that's just for me,
Oh yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't say that to anyone else because I don't understand how much value they put on that ideal, right? It's coming back around to what I was saying earlier.
Mm.
But for me personally, it's infuriating to see, that world at work. And then I'm sitting here being like, right, I have to remember, by rejecting the ideal, I reject everything else that is attached to that as well. So that means people who applaud the way that you look, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have rejected that because I do not align with the ideal,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's really is a disconnect from certain activities that might seem like really good and feel good, like getting a compliment that feels good to you might not be the same when you follow the ideal of beauty standard. Does that make, like, when you how do I put this? I'm getting ahead of myself. Like, if you follow and try to meet the beauty ideal of the day, the compliment that you get when you follow the ideal is going to be specific to that ideal. If you reject beauty standards of today, someone might say the same compliment, but it will never feel good because you're not trying to be that ideal. You're trying to be something else. Like, you are a separate thing. So if it's
Right.
the same compliment, that's what I'm trying to say.
Right. I don't disagree with that, but I just don't think I think that there is, talking specifically about the body ideal or whatever, like th- that was in reference to toxic positivity in
Mm,
in a bubble. Like you
Mm-hmm.
right.
can be too positive about a thing and it just creates a cycle of shame, because if you're not
Yeah.
positive about your body, if you don't love your body, if you're not you're rejecting the ideal. The ideal is something else, but your body is your body and you
Mm-hmm.
have to love it, or else there is shame there.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you are being shamed for not loving your body, regardless of if it's the ideal or not.
And
Right.
and that if you can't get there, if you can't get to a place where like you're totally in love with your body and you don't hate aspects about yourself, then you're doing something wrong. And that's the shoulding I've talked on before, right? Where we're shoulding on ourselves. I should love my this goes back to the Tumblr days, and I'm dating myself with this, but like there was this amazing comic that came out, especially around, I think it was particularly around body positivity, where it's this little comic, and it was set up very much like who was in Peanuts? Who was the girl that had the little like therapy stand?
Oh,
People get the reference.
Yes.
that's not right.
Yeah, people get the reference. So it was set up very
Sally or
much in that.
something.
Yeah, very much set up in that sort of format. And Lucy, yes. Thank you, people. I'm glad I'm with kindred spirits here, or fellow millennials or whatever. But it was very much set up in that respect. And a person approached the stand and was like, "Hey, I need some help. I don't love my body." And the person on the other side, and I'm just sort of like Cole's noting this here, where it's like saying like, "Well, you don't actually have to love your body, right?" It's good to work on if you actively hate yourself and you actively hate aspects about your body, but if you can't get there, then don't worry about getting there. Like, worry about what's making you feel shame, worry about maybe like reflect on the pressure you might be feeling to look a certain way. But you don't actually need to have this like magical positive relationship with your own body. It doesn't have to be something that's like a core part of who you are.
Yeah.
If you can get there, great. If you can't, it doesn't need to be that, right? But it is good to reflect on maybe why you're hyper focused on a number on a scale, or a particular body shape or whatever. Good to reflect on those things, and see
You
where that
shouldn't
shame
be
is coming from.
shamed for not being positive about everything.
Yeah.
That comes down to like sexuality as well. It's like
Mhm.
we're taught a lot of, for those of us in the alternative sexualities, we're taught a lot of internalized shame about our sexualities. And like it's okay to like not love being gay. Like and to like encapsulate in those ideals. You can just
Yeah.
like being yourself, and like if yourself also includes being gay, that's like a nice aspect about you, but like for a lot of people it's like being gay is like their identity. And it's like if you don't love to that extent, then
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
up
I've
to
talked
you.
about this before. I'm a teacup gay, right?
So
I
we need to run us through a definition for that, Kara.
Okay, it's from
Yeah.
Hannah Gatsby's first show, Nanette. And she does this very good explanation of how like there's the people who are very, outrageously gay and rainbows everything, and it's everywhere in the world for them. And it's their identity, and there's nothing wrong with that. But a teacup gay is like, you want to be inside a cafe as pride is happening outside, and you're just sipping your tea.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're not in the parade, you're observing the parade, and it's just an analogy or comparison to say like it's not the main component of who you are that you want to express outwardly to the world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get that completely.
Yeah.
I'm a teacup gay, but I do want to bring what Xandra said here. It's really important, is that it will always be other people imposing their ideals onto you that will cause the conflict in yourself mostly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to, and I will always say this, when you do not meet someone's ideal, they will treat you differently.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Right. Not as a teacup gay, because most of you won't know.
I think we all know you're gay.
Yeah, we talked about that. There's a funny story with that, but this is not the time and place. So
yeah.
But I think a lot of that, and this is not going to be surprised to anybody. I think a lot of this sort of thinking, this sort of like pedestaling of ideals, comes from a patriarchal capitalist white supremacist place, right? Like all three of those, the big three, I guess we could call them, are all about hierarchies and pedestaling and the best and most and
Systems of
onlys,
control.
right? Because when you look at any of those ideals, I think even though there's ones that we kind of like chafe against, I think I want to go back to what Des was saying earlier, but like I don't know that they're necessarily, there's ones that we don't resonate with, but I don't know that any of those ideals are necessarily have any weight to them by themselves, in and of themselves. But the society in which we live tends to prioritize ones over others and tends to pedestal the concept itself, right? That becomes this unattainable goal that we're always shaming ourselves for never achieving, right? I don't know why this is coming to my head, but I'm thinking about forgiveness as this like ideal as something we should value and all that, because it came up a lot in the work that I used to do around sexual violence, where particularly the person that chose to use violence was using this in really harmful ways, that forgiveness, and particularly like family members of the abusive person, right, where like forgiveness is necessary and all that kind of stuff. And again, if a person can get there and forgive people that have harmed them, that's great. But you're not owed forgiveness. That's something somebody chooses to give you.
Well, that's the kind of like Judeo-Christian epitome.
Yeah.
Is the ideal is to forgive.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not to say that there isn't something valuable in that. Like you said, I think if someone can authentically get to that point where they want to give forgiveness and they want to give that absolution to someone, that could probably be helpful. But I am 100% in line with that as well. Not a single person on this planet who has harmed another person is due forgiveness. You are not entitled forgiveness eventually down there. There is no Judeo-Christian. Am I messing up a term right now?
Yeah, there is Judeo and there's Christian. They're different.
Why have I heard that term before then in context of the evolution of Christianity starting from...
Because people like to lump them together. Yeah.
Propaganda!
Yeah, it is. Because being Jewish and being Christian are not.
Oh, like, no, they're not the same. But
no, but they're also different core value structures. Like they don't like...
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not. They aren't. They are. What? I'm confused.
Yeah. That's what I said. They're not the same thing.
Forgiveness isn't needed for atonement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole turn the other cheek thing was a Jesus thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But again, it's been so integrated into our society where if you're not forgiving somebody, you're harming them, right? And again, I'm only using this from my context where like I've seen this rhetoric come up in the conversation, particularly from participants. No one would be surprised, but particularly cis white men, that if you don't forgive somebody, you are as bad or worse than they were, right? Again, I don't know why that came up, but I think, again, that's just one of those ideals that gets used in toxic ways. And I don't know how we got there, but...
forgiveness.
Yeah.
But yeah. Xandra, if you want to drop some resources in the Discord, I'd be, or wanted to talk about it further in the Discord, I'd be super interested in hearing your opinion on this, that whole Judeo-Christian thing. That
Xena crisis, what is happening?
Well, I was dipping in and out of Xandra's little, Xandra's rewatch of Xena, and there was so much Christian symbolism wrapped in this like veil of Greek or Greek and or Roman mythology. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be one theology, and it was just like Christianity, right? So,
Christianity just steals things from other religions anyways.
yep.
That's how they work. Anyways. So I think now would be a good time to sort of switch gears, if we're cool with that, and moving on to our next topic.
Oh yeah. Let's go with it.
Learning and unlearning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, we have sort of been talking about that. We learn specific ideals and we learn specific values from the people we grow up with. And over time, we unlearn those things. But specifically, not talking about ideals and values, but talking about behaviors.
Yeah.
Not the things that we feel, but the things that we do.
Yeah.
You know, I know a lot of people who have grown up in. I have a lot of friends from West Virginia, and knowing
What does
them,
that mean?
it's. I don't want to. What's the word? I don't want to stereotype an entire state. But the stereotype of that entire state is that it's really racist. It's full of a lot of
I see.
racist people.
Okay.
And yeah, there's sort of a it's a less woke state, as it were. You know. And who, because they were raised in communities that were very racist or were very transphobic or homophobic or conservative or whatever, knowing them as teenagers and then like growing up with them and then knowing them as adults, watching them unlearn those behaviors was easier for some people, and way more difficult for others, because you assign like your own personality based on what you think is okay or to do, essentially.
Yeah.
And if you ascribe too much of your identity, like if you have that rigidity of like, I could never believe anything else is different, this is how it is, and this is how it's always going to be, sort of subscribe yourself to that ignorance, then it's very hard to unlearn certain behaviors.
Yeah. Well, and just to like kind of connect these two things on a personal level, like one ideal, I guess, that I'm currently working to unlearn is it's kind of funnily connected. There's winning on that chart. I sort of laughed at that, not just for the reference that was
Hashtag winning.
forefront in the meme cycle, well, a little while ago now, a couple of years ago now, in ancient memedom. But achievement, something I very much grew up in, and like achieving, getting good grades, that was the ideal, and that was valued. That was how I received positive reinforcement. But there was no acknowledging of the achievement, right? So it was like you study to get good grades, and so if you got good grades, well, it's because you studied, right? There was no acknowledgement of the achievement. It was just like, well, don't celebrate it because you just studied, so don't. No, you just studied, so don't. You can't be happy about that. You have to keep achieving, right?
Yeah, that is the
So,
standard. Like, you're
yeah,
supposed to succeed. If you're not succeeding, you're failing.
yeah. So you achieve, you get good grades, you get good grades, and you keep going up like that, right? There's no stopping to appreciate. There's no emotional connection to it, and that was how I received positive reinforcement, right? And so, again, not to therapy dump on people, but like this is what I've been trying to unlearn now as an adult, is that I seek that positive reinforcement. And so I silence my own identity because I will adapt to whatever other people want me to be. Because that's how I get positive reinforcement. If I adapt to how people want me to be, then I'll achieve something, right? I'll get that thing, and then I'll get that positive reinforcement, and there's no reveling in that. There's just like the next achievement, right? And so the unlearning that I'm doing is learning to be content in my own skin, to be content in my own personhood, and reflecting on that identity. And I don't know, it, again, not that it's that I'm achieving something, but it feels good to be able to recognize those moments. Like my instructor used they them pronouns with me, and I'm like, it feels good, not from an achievement perspective, but from like an identity perspective, where it's like
Yeah, like a
this,
validation perspective.
yeah, this is my identity, and I put myself out there, and my instructor recognized that, validated that, right? I didn't achieve anything, but I was vulnerable, right? And allowed myself to be seen. And that's a victory. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily achieving something, but it's something that I wouldn't have done because it was incumbent on me to be vulnerable, right?
Mm.
So, but anyways, that's my little story to transition or to like
Yeah.
link learning, unlearning for me.
I mean,
But I don't know.
there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of like unlearning is in itself learning. It's just learning something differently.
Yeah.
It's recalibrating your brain to do something differently that you had previously done a certain way. Um like a lot of my unlearning um like previous to coming out was like the way that we engender the people around us. Like the way that we gender the people around us. Like using less gendered nouns and pronouns and not assuming what everyone's gender is. And like that was because
Mhm.
that's just a thing that you learn growing up is like you have these certain physical attributes and then you assign a gender to that person and then that's what they are.
Yeah.
And that's just a thing that subconsciously you just learn as you grow up. And getting to the point where it like it was a process, like learning, like meeting my first trans people. It was a process of like I have to unlearn the automatic behavior of saying he or she
Mhm.
and ask.
Yeah.
And like that's
Well,
pretty hard. Like unlearning the things that seem like automatic behaviors is
mhm.
like the toughest thing.
Well, and even and Des, you can maybe think about this or comment on this if you want to, but like even for myself,
Hmm.
um, thinking about my own because I only learned and was exposed to the concept of non-binary at 30, right? So this whole last 5 years for me has been literally unlearning and deprogramming, misgendering myself,
Hmm.
right? And learn. It's funny that you mentioned unlearning because I've seen a few activists that kind of chafe against the concept of unlearning in that it's not actually possible. Like that's not what goes on. Like you learn different things and you move away from the stuff that you used to do. Um, it's a rhetoric thing as far as I'm concerned. I'm not too
Yeah.
invested in either one. Um, but like I misgender myself all the time, or I do it less now because I've been working at it. But in the early years, I felt that I couldn't claim non-binary because
Yeah.
I didn't experience body dysmorphia or gender dysmorphia, right? Like I don't experience the issue with a body that other trans people talked about, right? Or I didn't feel I was in the wrong body or whatever. Um, I just don't see my body the way other people perceive my body, right?
Right.
And I don't feel that dysmorphia the same way other people do. And so because of that, I didn't think I was allowed to claim not trans, non-binary.
Mhm.
Um, but that's in a way that's violence. That's a self-imposed violence, right? Because when I look at a non-binary person who leans towards one gender expression or another and say you're not actually non-binary because your gender expression is one way or another, no, of course not, right? So if I wouldn't do that to another person, but I do that to myself, that's violence to myself, right? And that kind of violence is, I've heard other non-binary and trans people talk about that kind of violence is harmful, right? It's inexcusable, right? So, but it doesn't happen overnight, right? And this is something that I was actually talking to my instructor about this, because I was mentioning to my instructor that, hey, I appreciate that you use my proper pronouns and stuff like that, and they were saying, sorry if I messed up, whatever. And that's something I've encountered quite a bit, where it's like, this is still new to me. This is 5 years. I'm 5 years old as far as non-binary age is concerned. It's new to me. It's still new. I misgender myself. I don't have space to deal with other people's emotional weight.
Yeah.
I don't have the energy to deal with your guilt about that. So please don't worry about it.
Yeah.
As long as I see somebody
if you're
correct
worried
themselves,
about it, just like make a valid effort to do better. You
Yeah.
don't have to apologize for it every single time. Like,
Yep. The thing that actually like is heartwarming to me is if I see somebody who I know I've come out to say they, and correct themselves like in the moment, that actually makes me feel amazing, right?
yeah,
The mistake isn't the issue. The fact that they corrected themselves is incredible. And again, this is just me. I'm only speaking for myself here. No non-binary or trans or queer person is a monolith for their identity. But for me, that means a lot when I see somebody trying.
yes.
Because again, I still make mistakes, and I'm not expecting perfection from anybody else. I do expect the effort, though. So.
Oh yeah, it's because it's we're reprogramming our brains. That for once was something that was automatic.
Yep. Yep. It's
Kara,
so
you
deep.
gone quiet?
Unlearning, Kara. What are your thoughts?
I don't know.
Are there behaviors that you're glad you've unlearned?
I don't know. That's a really hard question for me because I don't know if I have unlearned anything. I've been pretty fucking consistent in my life.
I mean, I can name one off the top of my head.
What would that be?
Your pearl clutching.
I would say the pearl clutching was not unlearning. That was being educated.
But yeah, unlearning is learning. You're reprogramming your brain to have different behavioral patterns whenever a certain stimulus has happened, like making an innuendo, talking about a sexual experience, whatever is like, instead of the automatic like, oh, we shouldn't be talking about this, or like, I'm judging you for talking about this. It's more of like, okay, well then talk to me about it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really valuable behavior to have unlearned.
I feel like learning is the process in life, or learning is the thing that you do, and unlearning is the process, right? So you're unlearning certain behavioral responses, but it's being guided by a new learning, right? Where you're allowing your mind to be open to. I think humbleness actually is a big part of this. Being humble. You can't unlearn and learn new things without being humble, right?
Yeah, that's probably the only one I can think of right now. Honestly, I'm just having a hard time kind of coming up with anecdotal expressions of this. I mean, there's I think what my biggest tie up right now is like, I'm like, is that unlearning or is it just discovering the truth? Like, there's like lots of stuff. Going through Catholic school, you're taught that the missionaries who first arrived in Canada were like the first explorers. They discovered this new land, all this. Yeah.
New
We
land.
laugh, but this is
No,
this
I
is
know.
how
No,
it's
I know.
taught, right? Like,
Oh, I know.
So that's what I'm saying is just like, is it this discovery of unlearning that information? Or is it you were just told a lie?
I feel like that's more like you were told a lie. Like when I
Right.
specifically talk about learning and unlearning, I'm talking about behaviors mostly, like patterns
Mhm.
of thinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the attachment to that was obviously like racism, right?
Yeah.
And colonial descendants, being a colonial descendant of something, right? And so the unlearning, I guess, from that was realizing like, no, you are not the first people to discover
Mhm.
this land, and
Yeah.
you have
Like
a whole
removing that
history.
sense of entitlement.
Yeah, like, I mean, at 12, I don't know how much
Right.
entitlement you can assess at 12, but it's discovering the world is not as what you've been told, right?
Mhm.
So the unlearning behavior, I guess, it's part entitlement, part discovery. I don't know what the right word is. I haven't really thought about it this way before, so yeah.
I don't know that these concepts are necessarily mutually exclusive. Like,
Yeah.
we were told a lie. Like, it was flat out blatant propaganda that, these wholesome Europeans discovered this completely open and uninhabited land.
Mm-hmm.
That was a flagrant, oppressive lie,
Mm-hmm.
right? And an omission of a very violent past. But the thing is, we grew up in that lie. And so the unlearning, we do have to deprogram
Mm-hmm.
so many automatic scripts that exist within our brains, within our minds, right? We have to put active effort into deprogramming the default things, because that's where microaggressions come from, right? Is and again, microaggressions is not to minimize the behavior, but to identify the fact that there's all these little ways in which we as white people engage in racist behavior, right? If we don't actively look into and deprogram these little things, again, not to minimize the action, but to call attention to the subtle ways in which we enact racism, right? Then we're just going to continue with it. It's fine to be, anti-racist, but like, what are we doing to deprogram the racist impulses that we have inside of ourselves, the homophobic impulses we have inside ourselves, the sexist impulses we have inside of ourselves, right? Internalized misogyny or not, internalized or active misogyny or not, these things exist within us, and we have to and it's incumbent on us to deprogram these things. And that's part of the, I guess, unlearning or new learning, or however you want to phrase it, right? These things exist within us. Whether or not the original source of it was a lie is kind of irrelevant, because the lie exists within us, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm also on the flip side of seeing the unlearning taken into a different angle and degree of things. Like, I have no problem throwing my brother on the bus. Like, my brother fucking turned into an MRA in 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Right. But for him, his unlearning was that feminism was ruining the world. Right. So I guess it's hard for me to see it as a unlearning as a like only positive thing.
Oh, for sure.
Right, because it can easily flip the other way, and it's just attuned to a different ideology, right? I know that that's not what we use that terminology for. Like, when we talk about unlearning, it's definitely not the same way that MRAs use unlearning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would argue that just like ideals, like learning and unlearning are neutral concepts.
Yeah. So yeah, I think I look at that as well as an example that you can look at and say like, oh yeah, unlearning is a spectrum of change of behavior, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just, I don't know why my brain popped in that way. It's like, oh yeah, I guess that's unlearning too.
Yeah, no, and that's real.
So,
Because
yeah.
the world is not, especially in today, like, I wouldn't say the entire world, but in at least the societies that we are currently in, like in the spaces that we are currently in, it is trending more towards seeing women as people than not.
Mhm.
And, you do have to unlearn, like, if you're, part of one of those groups. I mean, with cult, even with cult stuff, it's like, you unlearn that friends and family are safe places to talk. You can only talk to the people within your cult. We've got in Columbus, we've got a Zenos Cult, and it's
What's that?
like it's a hyper religious, like a sort quasi Christianity focused
Okay.
like cult, and it's just one of those things where like they isolate you entirely from the outside world and teach you that only people within Xenos are like acceptable to talk to, and that everybody else is. Zenos threw me out at one point. So, oh my gosh, Fembot, you've never told me that story. I need it. Zenos threw me out at one point. It was a shit show. Yeah, Zenos is a shit show. Like, I mean, there are local groups to our city that are like support groups for people stuck in Zenos that will get you out of Zenos because it's such a problem in our area. And but like you unlearn all the things that you were taught were safe, like your family and your friends, and like the safety nets we have in society at large, going to regular hospitals, going to homeless shelters. Like, these things are all considered dangerous, and they're not, they don't align with your new value system. So you have to unlearn that those things are safe.
Yeah.
And you have to learn that only the people within Xenos are safe.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm reading Fembot's thing.
Yeah, boyfriend at the time and I had a physical relationship probably like 10th grade. They threw us out of a service and told us our values didn't align anymore.
There you go.
Nice.
No, yeah, sorry. I didn't want to derail it. I was just like, I had that moment. I was like, oh, fuck. Unlearning is not just unlearning, right?
Well, no, I'm glad you brought that up because I think it speaks to the choices of individuals, right? Because these things don't exist as like these ephemeral things that are floating through the universe. Individuals make a choice, right, to embrace these things one way or another, right? And like, I don't know, like we talked about before, or like we were talking about like toxic relationships a couple episodes ago, right? And love was an ideal on that list, right? Where I'm like, man, I don't know, I'm pretty gray on love as a value because, again, given my experience in the sexual violence sector, I have hundreds of examples of love being used, love being valued, over and above the humanity of an individual, right? So the value is there, the ideal was there, but another person was actively using that value or ideal against another individual, right? So any tool can be used for good or ill, right? So I think it's important you brought that up.
Yeah, I think that's really valid.
Yeah.
I wonder if the question is now, how much, when we talk about unlearning or learning something, right? It's both. We're talking about both.
Yeah.
It's like, how much are you willing to apply your own self-reflectiveness attaching to a behavior that you have? And I wonder if that's really the road that you're supposed to be going down, is like having the assessment skills to say, okay, with if this is the truth, how am I behaving in comparison to this new information? Right? And having the self-awareness to then say, okay, how then, by me doing these actions, am I affecting the people around me?
Yeah.
right?
Well, and
I
that's
don't
why.
I don't think you can learn anything without a degree of self-awareness. Like,
Yeah.
because
Well,
you
yeah.
need to be able to be aware enough to accept the new information.
Yeah.
Because there's weaponized ignorance. Like, you can just
Oh, for
choose
sure.
you can choose to be ignorant about a thing for the rest of your life because because it benefits you, because it's
Mhm.
easier, because like
Mhm.
learning is hard. Like, engaging your brain to accept new information and to change your behavior based on that information is a skill set. And
Mhm.
it's unless you practice that, that's not a thing that comes naturally to lots of people. And like it's easy to be comfortable in your own ignorance or even to weaponize your ignorance against other people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because it requires vulnerability to
Yeah.
learn something new, right?
Yeah.
And again, I go back to what I was bringing up earlier, and that's probably why I was going there. Humbleness and humility, right, are a big part of all of this, where
Mhm.
you must embrace those things. Um, Again, I'm getting a big dose of it with where I'm at right now, switching careers at 35, right? Um, Doing classes with people half my age is pretty humbling,
Mhm.
right? Um, but as long as I embrace that with humility, it doesn't have to be this like existential dread moment, right?
Yeah.
Where again, I'm still fighting against the ideals that society has imposed on me. Whereas like I should have long figured out my career. I should have figured out my career at 12, I guess, according to society, right?
Mhm.
And worked my way to that and done my whole career, done 80 years as a lifeguard, right? I should have picked that at 12, right? I mean, that was what you did at 1950s, whatever, right? Um, you went and worked at Daddy's Iron Mill Company or something. Um, but the
Daddy's
reality is,
Iron Mill Company.
yeah,
Someone make the merch. Get on it.
Daddy's Iron Mill Company. That's my new
accidental
nickname.
merch. That's how we roll in this community. That's how we roll. But no, but my point is like there's the ideal imposed on you, and you have to push against that with a sense of humbleness and humility, where it's like I am okay to start from the bottom again, right? There's nothing humiliating about that. That's just I'm changing directions, right?
Mhm.
And I don't have experience in lifeguarding, and so I got to start applying for any lifeguard job that'll give me a lifeguard job, and then I'll move my way up and you know gain experience and gain that expertise and change directions, right? But that's where my life is at, and I can't measure that against anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a little bit of abrasion with the idea of just being purely humble in the eyes of unlearning or learning something. Um, my brain works where I have to be self-analytical and self-criticizing of that environment as well. Um, I maybe that's just because raising Catholic and just because someone says something under the guise of something else doesn't mean that that's their true intentions of something. And I've just perhaps been burned on that too many times. Um, where, yeah, someone might have new information for me, but sometimes it takes me a while. Sometimes it takes me stepping away, thinking about it, doing my own research,
Mm-hmm.
learning,
Mhm.
listening. And sometimes, you know what, those people are also wrong.
Oh yeah.
Um, like,
That's
uh,
a fair point. Yeah.
like I think that needs to be um a component of stuff too, and I don't want to make it this thing like everyone who's trying to teach unlearning things that they're bad. Like that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just wanting people to be more self uh encouraging or courageous to take the time they need to do the things that they need to do to figure stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Um instead of it just being this like immediate like yep, you
Well,
know,
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think
you know
anybody's
what I
saying
mean?
that.
Well, I think there's an expectation for people to just get it for some
Yeah.
things in this world, right? And I get it. Sometimes you run into someone and they don't have the patience to for that day to explain things or whatever. Like I'm just trying to encourage people to have the space to say, okay, this is a new piece of information for me. I need to analyze it. I need to learn. I need to see how I'm affected
Mm-hmm.
by that and what my actions do to other people. And sometimes that doesn't happen in an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't think anybody was saying that it does. I think those are just two different ways of approaching the same problem. Yours is very logical, and that like you want to self-analyze and look at like the reality of the thing, and like the way Joe was talking about it was very emotional. Like I have emotions attached to this thing, and I have to detach myself from those emotions attached to this thing in order to unlearn this ideal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think you're kind of both speaking the same language. It's just Joe's coming a little bit from an emotional angle, and you're coming a little bit more from a logical angle.
Yeah. And I would just I would agree that like I don't think they're mutually exclusive because
Yeah.
again I look at my recent experience where it's like there's degrees of humbleness and humility that I had to approach that with but there were also aspects about like I don't need to take in certain energies that I'm getting from my 16-year-old freaking classmates because if I go back to that energy, I'm just moving backwards from my own growth, right? I have to contextualize my classmates are 16. So their behaviors, their emotions, their contributions are all contextualized in the fact that they're very early on in their life, their lifetime, their lifespan, their life experience. And so I can contextualize stuff over here. I can still learn a few things here and there. But for the most part, and this is what I came to in this class, where it's like the only person that I really need to sort of impress or prove myself to is my instructor, right? Because I felt the pull. I felt that old pull to be cool or be relevant or whatever in this particular context, right? But the wisdom that I had that went along with my humility, where it's like my humility and humbleness allowed me to kind of like not shame myself for being 35 in a class of people that were largely 16. But the wisdom that I had allowed me to kind of like not shame myself for and just like direct my energy towards my instructor. It was like my instructor is the one that I really need to prove myself to, right? I'll just get through this. And yeah, you know what? Guess what? I have things to learn from this person because guess what? They've been a lifeguard for a long time. They've taught many courses. They have a lot to teach me, right? But I don't have to take everything they take at face value.
Yeah.
I need them to sign my card, right? And I got that, right? But I don't need to take everything they say as gospel, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's very much a both and, but I do appreciate that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because humbleness and humility does not mean that you let people walk all over you. Again, those things can be a way to survive a situation, but they can be very easily exploited by other people, right?
Oh yeah, I used to
So
be extremely adverse to learning new things because of the shame that I had attached to not knowing the thing in the first place. Like seeming like I was dumb or uninformed or whatever. So I would attach myself to the behaviors that I had learned and the things that I knew because like to admit that I didn't know it all was like a was a judgment on myself
yeah.
and was a bad thing in my eyes. So like being able to be like, "No, I don't know it all." Like, it's okay. Like,
Mhm.
it's okay to suck at things initially and learn as you go and to expand, the way that you behave and the way that you treat people and
Mhm.
um it's okay to like examine those behaviors and be like, why do I do this? Is this because I actually know what the fuck I'm talking about or I know what the fuck I'm doing? Or is
Yeah.
this just a thing that I learned and then decided never to question again?
Yeah.
Because the questioning itself felt like shame.
Yeah.
So,
And it's okay to never be good at a thing. It's okay.
oh yeah.
And this is only coming from like I guess like a Instagram video that I saw. Um, you can like a hobby and never be good at it, right? If you gravitate to certain things and you want to explore that, great. But if you enjoy skating but are terrible at it, it's okay to just be, stumble your way around the ice. And because I mean that was the example in the video, but um, again, and this is something again, this is I struggle with as someone who's like working through sort of like a achievement trauma, I guess. If I'm not immediately good at something, I abandon the thing, right? I
Yeah.
didn't take joy in doing the thing.
Yeah, I'm only having fun if I'm succeeding.
Yeah.
That sort of mentality. That was
Yeah.
like why I didn't really play video games with other people for a long time. Like I was like pretty serially like a single player only sort of person because I didn't want to like unless I figured out that I was good at that game and then I would play it with other people because I was like I could reasonably beat them. So I feel like it's okay to play this thing with other people. But now I like could not give a fuck. Like I know I'm bad at certain types of video games and that's fine. Like I had to unlearn my own like attachment to being good at that specific thing and to just have fun at it. Like sometimes just having like it seems weird. It's like I don't know, you may or may not agree with this, but like having fun is kind of a skill. Because depending on how you were raised, like being able to have fun in multiple different types of scenarios instead of just the scenario in which you're winning is not really a thing that's taught. Like winning is the thing that is fun. Like, the parents fucking shouting at soccer games at the ref because their 4-year-old like picked up the ball with their hand or whatever. Like whatever. Like, there's sort of this instilling of like you must win to have fun. Winning is fun. And yeah, winning is fun. But like it's not the only kind of fun that you can have when playing games of any type, sports, video games, whatever. Like being able to learn that there's more options than the one presented to you initially.
Well, I think I struggle with that. That's like a core key component. Like that's why I struggle with competitiveness as a concept, right? I'm just thinking about my experience playing PvP. I have a threshold of PvP where it's like I do my weekly objectives and I'm out, because normally I'm fumbling through my objectives and doing the bare minimum, getting it done, and encountering all these people that are way better than me, and I internalize that as shame, right? And again, I think it comes back to that achievement reinforcement that I received growing up, is that you're good, you're acceptable as a human if you're winning, if you're achieving. So
yeah,
I did like Halibut's clarification here.
Of fun you can have.
Yeah. It's okay to suck at things initially unless you're heart searching. Yeah. There's certain jobs, pilot I'd put up there. Art surgeon, pilot.
You should be good at those things eventually.
Yeah, it's really important that you maintain some skill in those particular careers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, as far as hobbies go, things with low stakes, it's like it's fine to just like doing a thing because you like doing a thing, not because you're any good at it.
Yeah.
It's fun when you're good at things, but it's not always like a requirement.
Yeah.
Just because something Hank Green said that I think about all the time, just because a thing is important doesn't mean it has to be serious.
I haven't heard Hank Green's name in so long.
I love him.
Thank you for that.
He's one of my favorite internet nerds. You should see his TikTok. It's glorious. Well, we're coming up on 2 hours. If anybody in the chat has anything they want to talk about, ideals and values, kind of go back to our first topic, or want to talk about learning or unlearning, are there any behaviors that you're glad that you've unlearned? Is there anything that you're in the process of unlearning? That because it's a process. Everything's a process.
Yeah.
I'm
just reading Halibut's follow-up comment here about, like, particularly with multiplayer games, you're also depending on other people not to be toxic. And I think that we touched on that a little bit early on with like the imposition of other people's ideals onto others, right?
Yeah.
Where if you're not good at this game, then I'm going to like hone in on you and question why you're not good at it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
I'm gonna treat you shittily.
yeah, yeah. Even if I'm on the same, I'm channeling my own toxic experiences with Destiny and Trials of Osiris. They introduced Trials of Osiris as the pinnacle PvP mode of Destiny, and they introduced sort of like a freelance thing where you didn't need a fire team to play, you didn't need friends to play with, you could just join solo. And I remember getting teabagged and shot at by my own teammates, and then seeing posts in the Reddit where it was like, these fucking freelancers don't know how to hold a gun and all that kind of stuff.
Filthy casuals.
Yeah, actively shaming people who were like just trying out the game mode, right? And then next post to be like, nobody's playing Trials. Why is nobody playing Trials? Destiny's fucking this up. It's like, what? You actively shame people for learning the game mode, and you're wondering why people are not playing the game mode.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because like that shame is not always self-imposed. Like that shame is imposed by other people. Like if you're not getting it fast enough, then fucking get out of Dodge. It's like that, we see that a lot in like leftist spaces on social media. Like you say one unwoke thing and to the guillotine you go.
Yeah.
Because you're still in the process of learning. And there's so much conflicting information as to what is, quote unquote woke, or what is, okay to say and not okay to say. And because everybody grows up in different spaces and with different knowledge, and there's no, stamped professional on what is okay to say and what is not okay to say. Like, people get shamed out of learning because they have a bad experience when they're learning something and they were shamed for not having the answer like immediately. And then they're like, well, fuck it. That's like, I tried and I got shit on, so I'm just not going to do it anymore.
Yeah.
It's less stressful for me to just continue as I was going on.
Yeah. That's why I always said it, like, as an educator, I always approached my work as ignorance was not a negative state. Somebody who was there to actively disrupt the conversation was one thing, right? But somebody who was saying something out of ignorance was not something that I was going to look too much into, because as an educator, that is literally what I was there for, right? Was to address that ignorance. Ignorance is not should be a neutral term. There's a lot of negativity associated with it, but again, there is a difference when there's ignorance and an unwillingness and a rigidity to learn. But if that person
that was something my stepdad used to tell to me, and I don't know that I agree with the definition like overall, but he was like, there's a difference between being stupid and ignorant. Like ignorant is just like you don't know, and stupid is an unwillingness to learn.
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree with that wholeheartedly, but that was definitely something my dad.
I think there's some like ableist angles in that for sure, but the sentiment is more or less like what I'm trying to get at.
There's a difference between ignorance and willful ignorance.
Yeah, and like a unwillingness or obstinance, I guess, to changing your views and stuff like that. I think it goes back to what Kara was saying earlier, right? Around, I think I'm right, and I'm never going to back off on that. Regardless of the facts that are presented to me.
Yeah.
I think I'm a mediocre video game player, and I will always think that. So
that's okay.
Kara was hyping me up in our last 2NPC.
Yeah.
But
why not?
You're not as bad as you think you are.
Do you think I stream the video games I play to be like, I'm the fucking best at this game? No.
You're better than you think you are.
But that's irrelevant, like it's just it's so funny that the value of it is just like, but you have to be good. No, it's fun. I play video games because it's fun.
Yeah.
That's all it needs to be.
Just don't hype me up. I don't know how to take a compliment.
I will never
No,
hype you up again in video games.
Fuck that. I will continue to hype you up.
God
How
damn
many
it.
how many times have I hopped into your chat and been like, so how's your back? For carrying this team.
I need to leave. I'm sorry.
Especially
I'll
when I
take it
was
for you.
playing Division with you guys. It's like, all right, it's fine. Joe will carry us. I'm just here to laugh and be goofy.
There you go.
And that's what I value.
Being goofy?
Yeah, having fun.
Yeah.
If I wasn't having fun, then I wouldn't do it. If I don't want to do something, then I won't do it.
Yeah.
Fuck that. Life's too short.
I will say I did agree with you that embracing fun, embracing that kind of like levity and just enjoying the moment, I think is very much a skill that is very much not valued in a capitalist society.
Fun isn't productive.
No.
But fuck being productive.
Especially as we're all now.
I say as a like diagnosed workaholic.
Yeah. I would say as tides are turning and people are being forced back into. I saw fucking people were taking it was in Toronto. People were taking pictures of signs that their fucking office building put to welcome them back to like full time in the office kind of thing. And like one of the signs was, "I bet your dog misses you." And it's just like, that's vile. That's what? It's
Why
violence.
would you make me feel bad for coming back into the office?
Yeah. Because one of the signs was like, "Hey, we missed you," and then like, "Oh yeah, guess your dog misses you, LOL," or something like that. It's like, what the fuck? And
See,
and
all
so
I would do is see that sign and I'd be just like, that's the worst marketing I've ever seen, and then go on my day.
It's like anti-marketing.
yeah, you just turn around and leave. It's like, I quit.
Just
Fuck
leave.
you.
You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
My dog does miss me. I'm going home.
Anything with the last 2 years has taught me is my dog matters way more to me than this
Yeah.
fucking job. So
Oh my
get
god.
fucked.
Oh, can I short rant about something for a second?
Please
Sure.
Okay, so we were talking about mental health on our last episode, and we were talking about stigma around mental health in our last episode. I went because I haven't been to an actual doctor in like a long time because I didn't go like, I mean, I've been to like Planned Parenthood because they got the whole gynecology thing. I've been doing that. I've seen a physical therapist for my shoulder, but I haven't been to like an internal medicine specialist for like a while. So I really super haven't needed to. But I wanted to switch up my dosage on my antidepressants. And I'm talking to this new doctor. I'm just getting to know her. I'm telling her my history, blah blah, and talking about wanting, stuff with antidepressants. She was like, "Well, do you exercise? Exercising is like you can get sort of like a high off of it. Like it's sort of like a runner's high. Have you tried exercising?" I have been on medication since I was 14. I have a history on both sides of my family of mental health issues. The chemicals in my brain are not going to be fixed by going on a fucking run, ma'am. I was so pissed. I was so pissed. I went through 3 generations of mental health issues, and I described in detail all of their mental health issues and all of the tests that I have had since I was 14, saying that I have a chemical imbalance in my brain and I need my fucking antidepressants. And then I told her one of my struggles with antidepressants is that I have a lot of nausea associated with my antidepressants. So she was like, "Have you tried ginger?" No, I've never heard of it.
What's ginger?
Ginger's supposed to help with your nausea. Yeah, I know. I need a pill. The ginger does not help. Ooh. I was so mad.
Des, I'm having flashbacks to my freaking grade school teachers who were of similar mind, because it's well known that after extreme physical activity, I get the neurotransmitters that I don't usually get day to day. Fun fact, they go away after about an hour. So
Yeah.
I would have to be doing physical activity, pretty much, intense physical activity for like 2 hours, have an hour focus, physical activity, hour focus, 2 hours. And guess what? Schools are not measured that way, right? And human beings are not capable of doing that. So, yeah, exercise does not fucking fix everything like some magical little spell.
Exercising? I could not.
Yeah, that's bullshit. I'm so sorry.
Stigma. So finally, I just told her what I needed. I was like, I need to up my dosage on this, and I need a prescription for this, and I need a prescription for this.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay. It's like, fine, thank you. Don't argue with me.
This is going to be the extent of our relationship. You fill out the prescription forms, and I'll just leave. Yeah.
And I will leave.
Yeah. Please don't talk to me. Please don't say anything. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyways, that was my little mini rant. I was thinking about it like right after. I was thinking about our talk about mental health and stigma around mental health. Right after that appointment, because I was like, "This is the shit we were talking about."
That is exactly the shit we were talking about.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I don't think we have any questions or comments about what we talked about tonight, so I think it's safe for us to wrap this up. As always, the conversation can continue in our Discord. The link has been popping out throughout the night. But yeah, I'm sure pretty much everyone watching right now is already in there, so that's fine. But yeah, so again, if anything comes up later that you're like, oh shit, we should have talked about that, just put it in there and we'll keep the conversation going.
Yeah. And follow us all on social media. We have a LessThan3NPC Twitter now at LessThan3NPC. And we have a YouTube channel where if you want to rewatch this for any reason, it'll go up sometime this week, or this episode will come up later up in the week. And we have all of our past episodes. If you've missed an episode, go, do the usual, like, comment, and subscribe. Make the algorithm love us as we pray to the algorithm gods.
I was wondering when like, comment, and subscribe was going to come up in our
comment, and subscribe. We're on YouTube, baby.
Yeah. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button.
Smash that bell.
Oh dear God! What have we become?
Then go follow all of our accounts.
This is a perfect time to end the stream. Okay.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for chatting.
Yep. Have a great evening. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.